No, I'm
Good
there.
afternoon and welcome to the POOLBEG PHARMA PLC company update. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time by the Q&A tab situated in the right corner of your screen. Just simply type in your questions and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company will review all the questions submitted today and publish responses where it is appropriate to do so. Before we begin, I'd like to submit the following poll, and I'd now like to hand you over to Carl Friel, Chairman. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Mark. Thank you very much for hosting our presentation, and many thanks to everybody who registered and everybody's online. It looks like a record number. As you know, I don't hear that often. I live with Jeremy's been doing a fantastic job, and the old chairman, myself, and co-founder only appears when there's something exceptional. So today is one of those days. I'm really excited to be able to present some of these exciting new developments in POOLBEG. Just before we come to them, to set the scene, as probably somebody know, we're talking about a pivot towards Amrit. I think it's appropriate. Let me spend 2 minutes telling you about the couple of previous life science companies I put together and why I feel now POOLBEG is about to copy them. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Cathal Friel. I'm the co-founder, chairman, and largest shareholder in both POOLBEG Pharma PLC and also hVivo PLC, both of them listed in London. And I know we've some new investors on board today who haven't bought shares, literally POOLBEG and hVivo, you can buy them by ringing any bank manager, any stockbroker. Since 2012, basically the last 11 years, I've successfully IPO'd 4 companies which I co-founded, was chairman or had been chairman, and always tried the largest shareholder. The first life science company that I IPO'd was Amrit Pharma, which I co-founded along with Joe Wiley in 2015. We IPO'd the following year in 2016 on the back of an acquisition of a distressed German life science company called Birken AG. Birken had 56 million invested in Germany, and we managed to acquire it for the princely sum of 1 million euros. The reason we got it so cheap was it had been loss-making and distress. We IPO'd Amrit at a market cap of 29 million. In 2016, raising 10 million new funds to give it a market cap of 39 million pounds. This is actually really close to the similar market cap that we've done with POOLBEG, which we IPO'd just 2 years ago. Amrit went on to acquire a number of several distressed life science companies, and the great news is, and some of you already know that you're investors in Amrit, it got bought for 1.48 billion by KZ earlier this year. The second company I IPO'd was Open Orphan in 2019. And after acquiring another distressed life science called Venn Life Science, which we acquired for 5 million, 6 months later, we bolted on hVivo for 7 million, where again, like Birken, hVivo had a huge sum of money invested in it, over 150 million. So buying at a knockdown price of 7 was pretty good. Now, Venn Life Science nor hVivo ever made money in their previous 20 years, but within 2 years of merging them within Open Orphan, which we have now renamed hVivo, it is hugely profitable, making in excess of 10 million a year, with substantial sales last year in excess of 50 million and a growing large cash balance of over 30 million cash in the bank. I'm giving this context because people say, look, this is Open Orphan, people knew him one trick wonder, Amrit's one trick wonder. Well, you can say I got lucky twice. So today, hopefully get lucky a third time, but I think, as Margaret Thatcher once said, you don't get lucky. It's just the harder you work, the luckier you get. So the reason we invited you all here today is that I now see huge similarities in what we successfully did in Amrit and what I think we could do with POOLBEG. Now, POOLBEG. First of all, repeating, I am a very hands-on, as Jeremy knows and else. Now, any company get involved, I try to be the largest shareholder and quite hands-on, and I like the chairman role. It's non-exec, so the new gentleman coming in and lady today and Jeremy gets on with running the company. My role is make sure it's going in the right direction. And I would make it clear, as the largest shareholder, I will plan and certainly would look to try and increase my shareholding at the appropriate time. There's always issues of trying to find a period where we're not in receipt of inside information, but certainly POOLBEG is something I would like to increase my position in. You may have seen our RNS from yesterday morning from POOLBEG, but if you haven't, let me fill you in. Basically, POOLBEG is about to pivot and replicate the fantastic success that we had with Amrit, and yesterday's RNS is just the beginning of that process. where we've announced we've hired 3 key Amrit Pharma executives who are now in the process of joining Jeremy Skillington and the team here in Poolbeg. As such, I'm very confident in the weeks and months ahead, we can replicate that success we've had with Amrit and yet again create another $1 billion market cap company. I'm really excited as to what Poolbeg can now going forward. Let me introduce the new and enhanced team in Poolbeg. You'll see from the slide, there's a fantastic leadership team, and they've got very, very important. It's dual skills. They have skills in drug development. This is developing the big blockbuster drugs like we have with 001, hopefully going into oncology. But really importantly, there's no good developing blockbuster and burning cash. I like seeing sales, revenues, and profits. So the team have now, particularly Dave and the Amrit colleagues coming in, have actually skills in selling drugs, building markets, generating profits. So that's just what I won't dwell on myself. I've said enough. Jeremy is well known to you all, and he'll do his introduction. But briefly, which is important, our CFO, Ian O'Connell, is actually my business partner, and he's one of our Poolbeg co-founders. And he's been on the board of Poolbeg since his IPO. Ian and I also co-founded hVivo PLC, formerly known as Open Orphan. And in actual fact, when Ian joined me in Raglan Capital in 2015, one of his first jobs was to head over to the Irish Company Registration Office and register the new company, Amrit Pharma, and that was 2015. Dave Ammond here is now the first of the big guns joining us from Amrit Pharma. And as our Chief Business Officer, I'll now ask Dave to step forward, introduce himself, and tell us 2 or 3 minutes what he did in Amrit to help build it into a $1 billion company. But most importantly, tell us how he's going to help us now get Poolbeg to be a $1 billion company. Dave, can we give 2, 3, 4 minutes on your background briefly to all of our participants?
Yeah, thanks, Carl, and for the introduction and for inviting me for a cameo role today. I'll be joining the organization in December, but very, very honored to join today. When RNSs go out like that, you always think, oh my goodness, what's going to happen to the stock price? And thankfully it popped up a bit. So that was good for me to see that there's some encouraging feeling around this pivot. I'm going to talk to you very briefly about 3 things. One is my history, which is, I'll keep brief, purely from a credibility standpoint. Touching also on Amrit and briefly on its journey, which I played a major role in, among others, and then really how we apply that going forward to Poolbeg Pharma. So my background is nearly 30 years in pharmaceuticals, mostly operationally in increasingly strategic or leadership roles. I think most notably from the biggest exciting learnings I had in my career, I spent 9 years with Amgen in the ascendancy, in 6 different jobs across Europe, Middle East, Africa, including UK and Ireland. Fantastic learning ground, fantastic growth company, even to this day going strong, as we all know. And at that time, 9 years into that those roles, I had 6 roles. I was approached by what was a small company at the time called Celgene Corporation, and Celgene had some presence in the US, but I was the number 5 employee in Europe. I took on and built the UK operating company for Celgene from scratch, put the main product, once it was approved, through NICE, and when we acquired additional products from Pharmion, etc., that company grew to a 300 million affiliate within the realms of the Celgene world, and that was fantastic learning as a general manager. The US leadership were happy with that performance, because UK is notorious for reimbursement challenges, and we were successful in that regard. And they asked me, the European leadership asked me to build the marketing and market access team for the region, for Europe, Middle East, Africa in Switzerland, which I did, and made that a very strong, effective team. And then I was grateful, very grateful, to be invited to build and lead global marketing for Celgene for probably one primary reason, really. Celgene was more of an R&D-led company, and I think it was time to balance that up and have commercial leadership co-chairing its development committees and putting robust plans together for investment, both organic and inorganic. And I spent 3 years doing that. And when I came back actually to the UK, I was taking a little bit of time out, Agerion, which some of you will be familiar with, another American company, had not had a good time entering Europe. And so I actually was consulting, trying to fix that European entry. And I think I was actually. But unfortunately, at that time, the company decided to pull out of Europe for macroeconomic reasons. They were going into a deal with a Canadian domiciled company, and they wanted to preserve cash. So I actually got a phone call saying, we're going to pull Lamicipide or Lajuxta. We're going to pull out of Europe. Not only that, we're going to pull the drug. And I was horrified by this news, because it's actually a great drug for a very serious disease. And that's why, in the end, after I was given an ultimatum to sell it within three or 4 months, which I did. I sold it to Joe Wiley and Rory Nealon and Mark Soumaret at Amrit on a royalty deal. So there was no upfront. The drug has already announced it was dead. And later, a few months later, I joined the Amrit team as a sort of 4th or 5th or whatever employee. So very early on, spent the next 5 years hands-on, building global commercial operations, market access capability, partnering with medical affairs to really drive growth of Lajuxta across Europe, Middle East, Africa. And then bondholders in New York saw that success and decided, actually, these guys know what they're doing. Did the deal with them, and did the, after the Chapter 11 for Agerion they were put through, we could take out the mother company and get global rights to 2 fantastic assets. Very proud day for me, because those assets were fantastic, but the company was loss-making, to Carl's point, and it was burning cash. And so we could really be stewards of those great assets and capital and grow worldwide. The company therefore reached up in the direction of 250 million of income from scratch, pretty much in that 5 or 6 year period. And that was a super exciting time, which is why ultimately, after then, an acquisition of Chiasma, which I was central in amongst the team in brokering that deal and executing against that deal. The company then, eventually became very interesting for strategics, which well, Chiesi in the end being the buyer for the company. So I couldn't ask for more from a career and learning. It's about patience, high unmet need. It's been about building company, building growth, building contribution for patients, for the team, but also for the shareholders. So I think for Poolbeg, I think really the opportunity here is to, we've got some great R&D programs already in play. The company have built that as I come into the company in December. But really now it's find a beachhead, get going, get momentum, build revenues, build contribution to reinvest. And once we get that team talent and that capability growing in certain geographies, we'll be able to drop additional assets in to leverage that capability and build the kind of value that we've experienced hands-on in the past. And it will be my pleasure to deliver on that as part of a team. And we look forward to keeping you abreast of changes as we get breaking news in the coming weeks and months.
Dave, many thanks for that. The other new Top Gun coming from Amrit is John McAvoy, who's unable to join us today due to prior commitments, as John is still Amrit's full-time chief legal officer. So I'm not so sure Casey would be too happy with John sitting fronting everything up. But John is signed, committed, coming on board as soon as his commitment with Casey on the 1st of January. John was instrumental in helping Amrit acquire low-cost assets, along with Dave. And most importantly, and this is kind of our direction of travel, he also led the charge in ensuring Amrit got successfully dual-listed NASDAQ. So you all know we're pushing this NASDAQ idea for quite some time. So John will be hugely valuable to Poolbeg going forward. Thirdly, we also announced yesterday morning that Laura Mara is also joining us from Amrit and coming in as VP of Clinical Operations. I know from some of the questions online that have come in today and overnight that you may be wondering, is our cost base going to increase substantially as a result of these new hires? However, we are always conscious of making money, and making money means not losing money and getting EBITDA profitable. We like money to go a long way. As such, David Ammond is replacing our existing Poolbeg Senior Business Development Executive. David English is politely leaving. We're on very good terms, but he realizes that we really have to step up to the big boys league now with real sales and real revenues by having the likes of Dave Hammond on board. And furthermore, Laura Maher is replacing our existing clinical operations executive. And again, Sultana is leaving in very good terms. We just don't like, we're still a small biotech. We can't build a monster. And as a fact of life, we've got to sometimes churn some of our staff and keeps other people hungry and more excited. So as a result of these fantastic 3 new hires from Amrit, our cost base will only increase by 1, namely John McAvoy, our new Global General Counsel. So in summary, I hope you'll see we have a fantastic and really experienced new people coming on board to support Jeremy. And one brief last slide I just want to show you, and this one to try and stitch things together, as what we did in Amrit. This dual track approach, you're going to hear an awful lot more over the weeks and months from Jeremy, from Dave, from John, what that means. So I would draw your attention if you look at the bottom left-hand corner of this slide in Amrit. And basically, Joe and I IPO'd Amrit in 2016, and being frank and honest, it was around the 50 million market cap. Being frank, it went nowhere. In actual fact, it went down a bit by 30%. Price-wise, but those are valuable years, getting the team together, getting trading, getting institutions in. The small companies don't happen overnight. And then the end year 2, as we went into year 3, Dave came on board with the rights to the Joxa, and the opportune word, he said, no upfront payment. And this idea, we're good at picking up distressed asset. It was a distressed deal. And within 12 months of Dave joining, you can see that number 2 block there, we had 17. Amrit went from virtually no revenues to 17 million. And very quickly, revenues start going. And you see the light blue line, that's not the sharp price, it's the market cap. So after acquiring the rights to the Joxa at no cost, we got 17 million in revenues. 2019, another distressed deal. Again, Dave brought this was an old company, and he worked with Joe, Rory, but most importantly, John McAvoy, to take a journey in and out through Chapter 11 in America. Point 4, revenues then, very quickly, you can go from no revenues in 2017, and within 4 years, revenues were 265 million, and the rest is history. Big Pharma comes banging in the door. So basically, I think what we're saying is dual track, this is having these blockbuster products. Amrit had them as well. But there's no good having blockbuster products and burning through cash. You have to have the revenue. And all we're saying clearly today, we are getting close to having real revenues, a pathway to profits. And that's critically important. I showed you the other slides about what we did in Open Orphan. The 2 previous companies, Venn and hVIVO, never made money in the previous 20 years. We put them together within 2 years, highly profitable. Likewise, Amrit wasn't making money for the 2 years. Within year 3, EBITDA profitable. We're guiding now. That's the plan for Jeremy, Dave, John, and the whole team to really drive. And just in summary, I'm so excited. I won't be popping up too often. The job of the chairman is to stay back and get out of people's way. But I'd say I'm the largest shareholder, and I've never been happier to be holding Poolbeg shares. So Jeremy, maybe I'll hand over to you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Super. Afternoon, everyone, and thank you to Cathal and to Dave for giving us their perspectives. Again, as Cathal alluded to, it's a very exciting time at Poolbeg. Very exciting, this kind of transition, this pivot that we're doing. And, as I say, there's a lot of excitement as we move this forward. Again, as we see here at Poolbeg, we believe we're now, very well positioned for success. And a few bullet points just to flag or to highlight, in that, enhancing the leadership team obviously brings lots of knowledge and experience. And as Cathal said, the dual business tracking of both research development, but then commercialization. I think it's a very exciting time for the company. And as we drive that forward, as I say, terrific new hires that'll, I think, fit in seamlessly with the, the culture we have here at Poolbeg, but very much focused on, driving our, company forward. The dual track, I think, is very important. Again, Cathal went through the Amrit story, and we feel that there's great scope to replicate that, Amrit 2.0, if you like. Again, having the experienced teammates, on board, but also, as I say, looking for assets to bring in, but continuing development as well of our own programs, which in their own right are very exciting, and I'll talk to those quite shortly. So again, focusing on market products and again, cost-effective development. Cathal's right, we're very much focused on managing the spend and keeping the cost low, and I think we've done a terrific job at that thus far. We see in our own pipeline, I'll touch upon this high-value program 001. I'll touch upon this is our second investor meet presentation of the week, where we talked about our oncology angle earlier this week, and I think that was very well received, and I'll touch upon that shortly for those unable to attend. The AI-led, again, that's something that's quite exciting and unique to Poolbeg, having access to data sets, and now we have some terrific outputs from those AI, artificial intelligence collaborations. And then lastly, looking at metabolic diseases and oral delivery of certain drugs. So again, we're in a very good position to push these forward. Strong financial position with a cash balance of 14.1 million. And as you see here, very modest G&A spend in the first half of this year, 1.4. So again, managing to spend. So long runway ahead, but as I say, we're this pivot. As I say, we've got a good deal of kind of buffer or comfort to get us there. So again, and on top of that, just balancing that with accessing non-dilutive grant funding. So terrific time for the company. Again, I won't dwell too long on the pipeline. I think you've seen this before. I will talk about 001 shortly, particularly in the oncology aspect. The partnerships I mentioned. We'll talk a little bit about the metabolic diseases aspects later on as well. But again, a nice robust pipeline that's moving along well, and generating key data that again will be attractive to partners, because as you know, that's one of the ultimate, the objective business plan of Poolbeg is partnering in that sense. So I'll touch upon those. Focusing in on POD 001, blockbuster immunomodulator for severe influenza and oncology. Again, where we're gaining some nice momentum with 001 right now, in that it's an oral small molecule, excellent bioavailability, it's proven and well tolerated. It's a clinical stage asset, so we know how it behaves in a human setting, and indeed in a human setting where there's an inflammation condition. We got excellent data coming out of our LPS challenge study earlier this year, which then I suppose kind of allows us to go in different directions with the molecule in this acute inflammatory conditions, but also supports partnering efforts, because again, having human data is something that pharma companies really like to see when they're bringing in programs in-house. Importantly, in this industry, we've got a strong patent portfolio, granted patents in severe influenza out to 2038. So a nice runway there. And earlier this year, filing patents in the oncology space. And again, I'll touch upon that and how exciting and excited we are to move into that space. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool scientist by training, so I was trying to slip in one data slide. And I think this just demonstrates how effective the POD 001 is in this recent LPS challenge study. So essentially what we're looking at here is the cytokine TNF-alpha, which again, as you see, is upregulated in the gray bar when you're challenged with LPS. Now, LPS is a bacterial fragment tricking the immune system into thinking that there's an infection, mobilizes all of the immune cells and starts expressing cytokines and, heading down that direction. So if you look at the gray bar, as I say, that's the highest, that's with no drug. Lowest dose of drug in the green bar, there's some reduction in that. And quite impressively, in the medium dose and the high dose, in the blue and the red, we're essentially kind of shutting down the vast majority of these cytokines and TNF. And again, so that confirms the target is being inhibited. We take the drug orally, it gets into systemic circulation, it gets into cells, it finds the target and blocks the target. So it works really, really well. But I only give TNF alpha as an example here, but we'll also see statistically significant reduction in the expression of interleukin-6 and interleukin-8, other cytokines. And again, this is all part of the the cytokine storm. So we're kind of quite excited to see that our drug can have this dramatic effect. So again, dose-response relationship. And of course, it's safe and well tolerated. And you got to see this in this situation. So we see, again, this a mirroring of the activity of the LPS challenge across to what happens in a severe influenza setting. And of course, in cytokine release syndrome in a CRS setting following immuno-oncology treatments. I think that's really generated a lot of excitement both internally and externally to Poolbeg very recently. I will just describe the cytokine release syndrome and what it is. There are several triggers. It could be an infection or it could be this immunotherapies. And it's essentially activating the immune system, but it gets itself out of control. So it's essentially the cytokine storm, this kind of increased levels of cytokines are being expressed. And what happens then is a sequelae to that. You get these clinical manifestations, as we describe on the right-hand side. So you get a fever, you get increased heart rate, hypoxia, so struggling to get oxygen in your system, and again, low blood pressure, hypertension. And, they describe these as kind of flu-like symptoms, but then there's a rapid progression for a subset of patients where it causes acute kidney injury, neurotoxicity, leakage of capillaries, vasculature, having issues kind of, containing the blood. So again, it goes downhill from there. There's coagulopathies and ultimately in some patients death. So it's a very severe, significant issue for those patients that get that severe end of the spectrum of cytokine release syndrome. And again, it's a significant issue for patients, obviously, and for pharma companies. And as I say, on Monday, we talked about the oncology aspect, and we had a terrific presentation. Martin Kaiser, presented a lot of data on the impact of immuno-oncology drugs on his particular area of interest, myeloma, but also that there is this significant issue. And I've share with you here one of the slides that Martin presented. So what we're seeing is this is a bispecific antibody, and you do see really strong efficacy with these drugs. So the graph here on the left-hand side, this is what you're seeing here is an overall response rate. So these are the patients responding to the drug of upwards of 63%, which is fantastic. If you're diagnosed with myeloma and you're looking for treatment options, this is certainly a really good option, because you see a lot of strong efficacy responses from these patients. But the challenge on the right-hand side is the cytokine release syndrome. So upwards of 72% of the patients that got this drug in this particular trial, Majestic 1, developed cytokine release syndrome, CRS. And what that does then, the challenge with that is that obviously, number one, the patients feel bad, but number two, it extends their stay in a hospital, and that's kind of an issue and a challenge and puts pressure on the healthcare system. So there's always that goal of kind of, listen, if we can reduce CRS, if we can block CRS somehow, the patients get home quicker. There's more hospital beds to fill with the new patients coming through. So there's kind of you're trying to kind of get that conveyor belt of patients through the system. So what we're seeing here, as I say, is terrific efficacy, but really challenging when it comes to managing CRS. And I think very excited that we can potentially play a role here. And I think on the back of that, as I say, this is where we kind of we talk about pivots. We go in the direction of looking at oncology and the 001 data we generated with the LPS challenge study. We applied to present kind of an abstract and a poster at the upcoming American Society of Hematology meeting in San Diego in December. And this is where 25,000 or so hematologists, scientists, clinicians, even patients descend for this conference to learn what's going on in the space, going on in the area. So we applied to present some data, and we're very happy to see that it was accepted. They see potential. These experts and leaders in the field that 001 could play in as I say, decreasing these cytokine release syndrome that are issues in the hematology spaces. And we do talk about the bispecific antibodies as well as the CAR T cell treatments as well. So we have our colleague Emma Searle presenting there, along with a lot of the Poolbeg colleagues as well, Liam Tremble, who's driving the scientific aspects of the program, and Professor Brendan Buckley, who many of you have met before, driving that forward as well, along with our colleagues at CHDR in the Netherlands. But again, very excited to present this data, share it with key opinion leaders, share with pharma companies who are obviously keen and interested to address this CRS, cytokine release syndrome issue that they have. So again, exciting for Poolbeg, excited for the company to be branching into that direction, in addition to severe influenza. So we see, again, with the same drug, multiple potentials. So we see a lot of these big pharma companies, you recognize these logos undoubtedly. They've got a lot of programs in the immuno-oncology space. It really is transformative what immuno-oncology is doing right now, using the patient's own immune system to go after the tumors in their system. So again, there's strong interest for pharma that if they can manage the CRS, they do see there'll be an increase in market size, market shares for their drugs. So a lot of interest in seeing how POOL 001 can address this CRS complications from these cancer immunotherapies. So again, we've mentioned this before, we have discussions ongoing with prospective partners. And again, it's about getting a good deal. We're all about the transactions now with Poolbeg, on top, as I say, of the commercializations aspect that David spoke to. So good discussions going on in that regard. So again, like I've said this before, we kind of watch the space, and so we've got a few weeks to ASH and several meetings set up to discuss this, and obviously planning forward for our clinical trial, CRS clinical trial next year. So switching onto our AI programs, again, I'll keep it brief because we want to leave time for questions at the end. Certainly, I'm sure there'll be questions for Dave and Cathal and myself. So the AI programs, again, through our collaboration with hVivo, when we demerged, we had access to very exciting data sets of the challenge models that they run, particularly in influenza and RSV. So we took this huge, very large data set, and it would have been too difficult, too large, too lengthy, too expensive to do some lab analysis to understand what's going on from a disease progression standpoint. So we collaborated with 2 companies to look at this influenza data set. This is with Cytoreason, based in Israel, who have a number of existing pharma collaborations, including Pfizer, Roche, Sanofi, and Merck. And again, to identify novel drug targets in the influenza space. And it's a terrific collaboration. And again, took very short 14, 15 months of time and effort to understand the disease progression and coming up with novel targets. And I say novel targets, these are genes that are increased expression, but heretofore were not identified to be involved in influenza or indeed infectious disease progression. So again, great novelty there for that we're moving forward now for lab-based validation. And then we took a different approach with 1-3 Biotech, where we got them to identify the RSV data set, but wanted them to come up with initially kind of RSV drug targets, but drugs that pair with those targets. So these are existing drugs that then we can go quite quickly into validation and ultimately into the clinic through partnerships to look at this RSV space. And again, this is a significant issue with the elderly and the young every winter, many different infections coming through in the RSV space. So again, excited about the progression from that. And then the last section I'll speak to is our oral delivery platforms. Again, part of our pipeline, utilizing validated delivery technology to develop this technology to our collaborators at Anabios on the market in the food science area. So we're reapplying it to the pharmaceutical sector. And so we're focused in right now on metabolic conditions. So we have a license for their technology for use in metabolic diseases. And you're quite excited with the first program that we're moving forward here. So oral GLP-1 agonists. So again, these are a very exciting drug class, majority of which are injected. So they're looking for alternatives to avoid injection. And so we are planning a proof of technology clinical trial incorporating this oral liraglutide, delivered orally, and running a clinical trial next year. So we're preparing all of the documentations. The clinical trial site has been identified. The principal investigators identified. So moving that forward. And again, we see if we can deliver this drug orally, that will create significant excitement in the field and in the space. And again, ultimately making our partnering efforts easier, having that data. So as I say, that's the plan is to have that trial commencing in the first half of next year, and likely read out in a very short period of time. And one of the POOLBEG strategies, these are very short clinical trials. We do not go into very long clinical trials, similar to the CRS study. It's just looking at the effect of these drugs in a short setting, but gives you valuable human data ready for partnering. And one of our, I will say that the GLP-1 agonist market is huge and growing dramatically. There's been some really exciting data of late demonstrating its efficacy in not just diabetes, which has been known for a while, but in obesity, reducing weight for obese patients. So, and then cardiovascular benefits as well on top of that. So very exciting drug class. And then more recently, we partnered with a NASDAQ-listed biopharma company to produce a prototype oral drug for a metabolic condition, something that they're working on, but they're looking for a kind of a new and improved version, let's say. So the potential for following our proof of concept collaboration is to expand into a full licensing agreement. I think importantly with this platform, with this oral delivery platform for metabolic conditions, we can do numerous of these type of deals into whatever cargo we want to put in and insert. So very exciting from that standpoint. So again, my last slide before we'll open the floor for questions is again the investment case. As Dave mentioned earlier on, very happy to see that our oncology story we presented on Monday. The RNS that went out yesterday about the new colleagues Cathal mentioned about the pivot has been very well received. I think people see the job we've done thus far to move the programs forward. Again, in our kind of managing the capital burn accordingly. But I think now we're in this kind of like nice kind of a inflection point where the company will grow. And again, the associated share price, similar to Amrit, is our drive and our ambition to achieve. So enhancing the leadership is obviously a very exciting time for the company. Lots of knowledge and experience coming through. The dual track business model. I know Cathal has mentioned plenty of times in the past, about your traditional biotechs who basically it's like spend, you know, until you know, they're kind of, you know, running out, you know, but we never intended to do that. So obviously, you know, supplementing or complementing that business strategy now with commercialization will be very exciting for ourselves as a company, you know, for patients, and obviously ultimately shareholders. And again, it's seeking and attracting these high value programs. You know, lots of diligence going on. So as you say, it's a case of watch this space. There are a lot of activity going on to bring in these, you know, commercialization stage programs into Poolbeg. And then lastly, as a reminder, a strong financial position we find ourselves in, 14.1 million in the middle of this year. And again, very low, you know, cash burn overhead, which we will carefully control. Again, that's something we do quite diligently. And as I say, I think this dual track business model is ideal for Poolbeg with the stage of our development, the stage of our growth, the stage of our progress. So looking forward to the months and years ahead, as I say, with the new colleagues and ultimately with new programs and moving forward our own existing pipeline. So again, very excited about where we are sitting right now. And again, as I say, we'll keep the markets updated as we progress and have more of our news flow, as I say, over the coming months and years. Again, greatly appreciate your time for that. And we will take some time now for some questions. I think there's a few pre-submitted. And if I can, I'll read out the questions and then maybe point the finger at either Cathal or Dave or myself, who's best placed to answer that. So we'll keep it going in that standpoint. First question was pre-submitted. Licensing new drugs takes time. Are you expecting to need additional cash before sales income at Poolbeg is established, and maybe a rights issue? I guess, you know, I can start off on that, and Dave, you gave your AMRD example, but I think there are, you know, drugs out there. There are, you know, assets available. These are, you know, tough times for many companies. As I say, we're fortunate to be in a good, healthy cash position. But I think, yeah, they do take time with John McAvoy on board. He's a very experienced lawyer. He does deals really quickly. And as I said, minimizing any you know, upfront you know, payments. I think that'll be a you know, key focus of Poolbeg. Dave, do you want to add anything to that? I know you touched upon your AMRD experience, which I think we will try to mimic. But you know, there are opportunities out there. I feel, you know, that would be ideal for Poolbeg.
No, I think that's right, Jeremy. You know, my as I keep my ear to the ground and my eyes open, I'm seeing a lot of distressed assets, including approved assets, where cash has been tight, they've been burning cash, or they're peri-approval, they're in phase 3, or you know, and they've not been adequately launched. So, yeah, unfortunately, as a result of pandemic and people burning through the cash and not quite getting over the line into organic growth, I'm seeing more than usual. And when I come on board in December, we'll put the foot on the gas, and you know, deals are there to be done. And I think we can move very quickly on a deal to get a beachhead. That would be the goal. Because once you know, you can be spectators in life, and you can talk about strategy, which I like talking about, by the way. But you need to, at some point, to get on and get into gear, and then build from there. And I think that's what we will do fairly quickly.
Excellent. All right, Dave. Thanks for that. Another pre-submitted question. I think Cathal has probably addressed this already, but are these full-time employees, and how do they fit with the existing structure? Yeah, I think Cathal addressed about replacing existing staff. And as I say, just removing, as I said, the overheads don't increase that much, but I think the productivity will be terrific again, given the, you know, as Dave's mentioned, the commercialization angle. Robin D has a question. It's quite long in a couple of parts, but let me be, you know, quick. Can you comment on the prospects for the oral GLP-1 project, which is topical given the AstraZeneca deal announced yesterday in the space? Correct, that's with a Chinese partner. It was phase 1 data, and it was, I believe, 180 million upfront, if I recall correctly. Obviously, there are 4 major players in this space, mostly phase 2, phase 3. And I myself a little skeptical of the patient preference compliant benefit of an oral versus injectable. Interesting. Can you find an out-licensing partner for this asset, and what additional data would need to be generated to make this a realistic prospect? Robin, thank you. I'll address that. As I say, I did talk about the deal yesterday with AstraZeneca. We love seeing deals in the space. I think it validates the interest that you know, big pharma companies have, number one, in the GLP space, But I too, maybe I disagree with you, but I think in the the oral delivery space as well, I think these patients who have to get daily injections, they get tired of that really quickly. If you can replace that with an oral product, I think that makes compliance and obviously convenience a lot easier. I think from a partnering standpoint, as I said, we've got our clinical trial protocol, design, in place, agreed, documents, submitting, etc., to the regulators, going through all that aspect. These are very short clinical trials. I'd say it's essentially looking at your glucose tolerance test and looking for your drug, in systemic circulation. So again, these are not long, lengthy trials. But from our discussions with pharma partners up to now, there is a clear interest in an oral GLP-1 agonist. I think certainly when it comes down, there's one oral drug, oral GLP-1 agonist on the market, which has about a 1% bioavailability. So that means only 1% of the drug that you ingest gets into systemic circulation, which makes it cost a lot of money. That's a lot of cost of goods associated with that. So any improvements in that, I think there'll be really strong interest. Excellent. I hope that answered the question, Robin. Robin has another question here. As Poolbeg pivots into this new business model, will be focused on licensing and distressed clinical candidates for development. Is there an intended therapeutic area of focus for the new strategy? I think we touched upon that. Dave touched upon that. I think we'll be somewhat opportunistic is one way to look at it. I think initially you'll see as a company how we've developed and evolved over the last 2+ years, starting in infectious diseases, being opportunistic, looking at the metabolic diseases standpoint, looking at oncology. So I think we'll remain to be opportunistic. And I think, Dave, maybe if you want to comment on that as well. You love your strategy, as you said. These are we'll make good decisions and clear decisions on what's the right program to bring in. But as I say, we'll we have the team in place now to execute on that. So, Dave, do you want to?
Well, the only thing I would underline that you've said already, I would just underline that the goal would be to look for approved, peri-approval approved or launched assets to drive growth and contribution, not to take on clinical risk and burn. That is not the goal. In terms of therapeutic area, I don't love the word agnostic to therapeutic area, but let's talk about the underlying principle, which is if a disease has a clear, high unmet medical need and an asset has a value proposition to solve that need better than alternatives, immediate and near-term alternatives, therefore driving value to patients and the health system, we can be the stewards of that asset to get it to the right patients at the right time and ensure the pricing is appropriate and drive growth and contribution. So that's the only thing I would add. I don't foresee us taking on a big phase 3 program with a lag and burn and clinical risk. It's just that could be for another day if we're motoring. But right now, it's we want to get off to the races.
Yeah, no, great. I appreciate that answer. Okay. There's one here. I'll drop it in Cahill's lap. Jeremy, we seem to be moving towards NASDAQ more rapidly. Is there a rough timeline of doing this that you're aiming for?
Look, I've always said we can't say when we'll go on NASDAQ. I think it's the stated ambition of any biotech that really wants to grow substantially. NASDAQ has been on it. Say John McAvoy was critical and did lion's share of the Amrit drift or approach to NASDAQ. So that has to be on our criteria. We simply can't put a time on, but it's on the agenda. Is that okay, Jeremy?
I think that has to cover it. So we have to be careful with how we speak to these specifics, let's say. Sparky J, good to have you on again. Hi team, congratulations on all achieved to date and welcome to the new members. Is it fair to say we have multiple partners with an interest in progressing to signing a collaboration deal? And also, do we still have aspirations to get on NASDAQ? So Cathal just answered that second part. For the first one, yes. I mean, we are very BD focused. I think I mentioned in the past, I've been 20 years in the industry, almost 21, but BD has been my focus. So we're always discussing with pharma. We just got back from Bio Europe this week, again, continuing discussions. I think the oncology aspect I mentioned is really piquing a lot of interest. So yeah, I mean, there's a good deal of interest there from farmers, and obviously our ultimate goal is to have this trial, whether it is funded, whether it is getting option agreements. There's many ways we could structure a deal where Poolbeg and our shareholders will benefit substantially. Question from Michael, or what other uses, i.e. disease types, do you anticipate POLB 001 potentially benefiting? It's a really good question. I know I said in the past about this acute inflammatory conditions, and these are diseases where you get this kind of an inflammation response for a week or two, and then you can kind of manage it. We're not looking at things chronically, like rheumatoid arthritis. I've spoken about it previously. But the one thing our intellectual property attorneys tell us, not to name names, not to be specific about what diseases we will pursue, because number one, that kind of will create competition in the space, but number two, it may issue future patent filings when it comes to prior art or prior knowledge. So we'll stay away from that one. But I think we're just delighted with the data we got from the LPS challenge study. So any disease that's that has a P38 MAP kinase component, we'll be certainly looking for that, because again, I've mentioned before many times, what pharma do like is looking for drugs that have multiple uses. They have, from a commercialization standpoint, from a regulatory standpoint, from a manufacturing standpoint, there's many benefits to having a drug, and we believe 001 could be attractive in that regard. Question there, how does POLB, it's from Elric, how does POLB envision the potential impact of POLB 001 as a therapy for CRS within the current landscape of cancer immunotherapies? Again, I touched upon this earlier on. We know, I mean, if you rewind the clock, and we covered this on Monday, cancer patients, back in the the 1950s, again, not that long ago, chemotherapies were brought in with mustard gas, essentially what they were using to kill off white blood cells. And we've progressed a long way since then. These new immunotherapies are game changing. You look at CAR T cell treatments, and you're actually, cancer physicians, they try and stay away from the word cure. It's, as I say, you don't mention the C word when you're talking about the C word. But what they're seeing now, certainly in the CAR Ts and in the bispecifics, is that you're seeing this remarkable efficacy. But again, it's managing these side effects. Getting these patients, if they could, get the drug in hospital and go home, that would be ideal. But what they have to do is stay in hospital with the risk that CRS has developed. And of course, they're monitored, they're taking up beds, it's a weight on the healthcare system. So I think, yes, there's lots of opportunities here. And you saw the slide where, there's a lot of logos from pharma companies who are in this space. So I think it's, it'll be pretty exciting in that regard. I think just a couple of more now. I see we're kind of, we're good for time, but do you think the use of cancer immunotherapies is going to keep increasing? Is there other immunotherapies out there that 001 could be used alongside? I think that the short answer to the first is yes. As I say, it's a game-changing new therapy in the cancer space. There's lots of companies developing their bispecific antibodies, their CAR Ts. And and what they do, and again, from a mechanism standpoint, the bispecific antibodies. So basically, the two arms of an antibody, one of them binds to an epitope or protein on the cancer, and the other arm of the antibody binds to a protein on the surface of T cells and brings the T cell close to the tumor, and then as the T cell sets to work and kills the cancer cell. So what they're looking at now is like a whole host of antibodies that target different proteins on different cancers. So I think, yes, I mean, it's going to kind of explore and expand, in that direction. And of course, that there's always that concern then of CRS, coming from that. So it's weighing the kind of risk benefit. And I think obviously in a cancer setting, there's greater acceptability of the risks associated with the benefits, because a condition can be terminal. So yeah, and other immunotherapies, yes, I say we touched upon that. But I think now for one last question, again back to Cathal for this one, from Jay Roberts. Cathal, I see you're the largest shareholder in both hVIVO and Poolbeg. If you were to buy more shares of one of these businesses, what one would it be? I think I know. Yeah, I know what answer I'd give. But anyway, Cathal.
Jeremy, thanks very much, and thanks to Jay Roberts. Yeah, look, I'll answer it by, first of all, I started a little preamble where I came from, because I know get a bit of dog's abuse at time for maybe overhyping shares. But look, I did do 4 IPOs. I've never sold shares in the market. I always wait until the company gets bought. So if the share goes in between, if it goes back down, I always follow my money. I put a huge amount of my personal interest in Amrit. Yes, could have got more, but got cash when it got sold. Likewise, hVivo, I've never sold a single share in hVivo. Hopefully one day it may get bought. That's the time I'll leave. As regards Poolbeg, yeah, I think everybody can hear. I've popped my head up again. Jeremy's doing a fantastic job. I did help Jeremy bring some of the Emirate team in. I would have known them really well. So look, there's a clear answer. It is difficult as a director, as a chairman, ever to get a window in small cap companies to buy shares due to insider trading rules. We usually subject information, but absolutely. Of the two companies where I'm a large shareholder as we speak is hVivo and Poolbeg. We all invest in small cap biotechs to get that 4, 5x, 10x. Sometimes it happens, and I tell you, sometimes it doesn't. My strong belief at the moment, it took quite a while to do Emirate. I think the second time around with Dave, with John, with Laura and the team together, working closely with Jeremy, certainly when I can get a moment and when I can get an opportunity as we go forward, is that weeks or as months in Poolbeg, that I'm free of information, I would certainly like to buy more shares in Poolbeg. So hopefully, Jeremy, does that answer the question?
It does. Good to hear, Colin. Good to hear the confidence. Yeah, so listen, we'll wrap it up there. Lunchtime, I know. Listen, really appreciate again people's taking their time and their energies and efforts to join us for this IMC update. Again, very exciting time for Poolbeg, and we'll keep you updated on future progresses. But again, enjoy your rest of your day and the weekend, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Perfect. Jeremy, Cathal, David, thank you very much for updating investors today. Could I please ask investors not to close the session, as you'll now be automatically redirected to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, and I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of POOLBEG Pharma PLC, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation, and good afternoon to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.